So welcome everybody. Happy Friday. My name is Debbie Rosen, and in the background is Lindsay Toms. We are the owners of the Study Pro, and Dr. Varblow is here this morning. Welcome, Dr. Varblow. We're so
Thank
excited to
you.
have
It's great
you.
to be here.
And I will do a more formal introduction here in just a couple of minutes, but I wanted to share, if people don't know who the Study Pro is, I think most people are pretty familiar with us if you're on here. But of course, we are an executive function and study skill center. It is that time of year, Dr. Varblow, where I think we are starting to see the pressures on executive functions in all the areas that you're seeing here below. And we, in short order, offer some structures and, of course, skills and strategies support to help students to counteract kind of underdeveloped or still developing skills. We know it is very typical for students to sometimes struggle with work despite being super smart. They can get stuck. And it's very typical and appropriate for parents to worry. But the great news is that that gap between where they are performing and where their abilities are can be closed, as I know we'll be talking about today too, with brain development, as we were talking about our own kids this morning offline, as well as development of strategies. And so that's really what we're focused on. And so what I wanted to probably spend the most time in my intro doing is just sharing some exciting work that we're doing. If you, obviously, if you have a student, or I know some of you are from schools, we do provide executive function training for educators. So we have these dates that you see here on the PDF, but you can also, or also on the slide, we do full day training to help educators to see behaviors in a different light and to translate those into what might be the underdeveloped executive functions and what are strategies we can use, not to give more work, but actually to take the pressure off educators and to help them make the classroom and students' lives more manageable. So we're excited about that. We also do specific professional development at schools, and we're doing a lot of that this year actually, as well. So if you are an educator or you know someone who is, please pass that along. We also have an exciting new parent workshop. We have two ways to join, either remotely, as you can see on the left, the sessions, or excuse me, on the right, two ways to join, either remotely or one day in person in February. But we get so many questions on what do I say and what do I do? How do I keep my calm? How do I engage with my kids? What should I be doing to be the type of parent that I really want to be when things get emotional or when things aren't working and maybe I have to manage my own executive functions. And so Nicole, as you know, Dr. Varblow, Nicole McGarry, because that's where actually we reconnected, right? Recently. She is coming in as a guest to lead the parent workshop. And we're really encourage everybody to join. It's a one-time opportunity that I will say Nicole was the therapist for my son for many years, and she is, as most people would know, just extraordinary. So you can email me, email info, or use the QR code if you're interested. It's also on our website. The other thing that we do here, and we do it for both high school kids as well as parents, is something called Gain the AI Edge, which is a workshop on how to use AI effectively and appropriately to improve executive functions. So the screen you see on the right is the basically portal we use for the kids with full slides and actually very hands-on use of AI to help them to see how to use AI to do the things that we know are hardest for them, like start their work, better understand their material, help organize, plan, to self-advocate, how to improve their work by understanding maybe teachers' comments and things. We know that, of course, we don't want AI to do our work, but if we can make it easier to get our work started, then that's really where AI should come into the picture. If you have a middle schooler or anyone younger than a high schooler, we encourage you to take the parent course. Lindsay and I ourselves teach that. And then the high school course is, we believe the high school students, and we've seen, are really at the right age to use this tool and to really make a difference. Anyone who's kind of tech savvy or tech forward, we really have seen just a lot of interest and excitement in this 3 hour workshop. So we have a few of those coming up. And then for middle school, we have a free writing workshop. Many kids get really stuck, don't know how to get started. That seems to be one of the real challenges with executive function. And we have a workshop coming up February 7th for middle schoolers that is free. So we hope that you can join that. And you'll see the QR code here for that. And then this is the parent version of the AI workshop. And then the last thing we're going to talk about is we are presenting at the Fairfax County Resource Center, and we're excited about that. That's March 11th from 10 to 11:30. That's a remote presentation. So if you want to hear more about being smart but stuck and learn more about executive functions, we encourage you to sign up for that. So with that, oh, sorry, the last thing I'll say is you'll be getting invitations to all of our upcoming webinars. The next one, which is the only one I'll talk about here, is ADHD through the lifespan. So we have 2 practitioners, highly respected from Stixrud Group, talking about ADHD from childhood to parents. We often hear kind of apple and tree, that a lot of times parents will share with me, oh, wow, after my son or daughter got tested, I realized, boy, this sounds really familiar. And we do hear that a lot. And so if you're interested in how ADHD just changes either for yourself or it changes through the lifespan, we'd love for you to join us, and we'll be sending these out to you. And as I was saying before, so now I'm going to actually stop sharing Dr. Varblow so you can go ahead and share, but I'm very, very excited to have you here today. This is the second presentation over the many years, and I was so excited that you agreed to come back. If you don't know Dr. Varblow, she is a behavioral and pediatrician and ADHD expert in McLean, hugely well respected in the community. We trust her, and we know that she's a gift to our community because she has a way of helping parents understand ADHD in a way that I think immediately lowers the temperature, because there's clarity and science, especially around this no-go model, which you're going to hear today. And she, I think what she does is bring a lot of clarity into why kids know certain things, or we know that maybe they know what to do, but they can't really do it. Their brain can't always help them access that knowledge at that moment. So, of course, Dr. Varblow, we're so happy that you're here, that you can demystify kids' behaviors. And just a housekeeping note that we are going to take questions at the end. So please do put them in the chat. I promise you we will get to as many as we can. But I think Dr. Varblow is going to present first. And then, as I said before, it is recorded, so you'll get all of this, the link after the presentation. So with that, welcome again. Thank you so much. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you great.
Okay,
yes.
Great. All right. Terrific. So good morning, everybody. And thank you for your attention this morning. This is a common sort of parenting struggle that I really like to focus on because, ultimately what we want for our relationships with our children is for our kids to feel like we are there for them when they need us. And when there are problems with sort of non-compliance and kids not behaving the way we would like them to behave, that can be really frustrating, and it can lead to heated discussions, especially if it's confusing, which it often is. And then what ends up happening is the relationships are impacted, and that's really where the tragedy is down the road, as far as I'm concerned. So I want to just go through some of why these things happen and some approaches that you could consider taking in the future. I want to start by explaining my no-go model, and that's no as in K-N-O-W. And this is a model that I developed years ago in trying to understand how ADHD brains are different from the brains of people who are, I suppose, lucky enough in some ways not to have ADHD. And I want everybody to think of the brain sort of as conceptually having two components. The know component is where we keep track of all the things that we know. That means the spelling words that we've memorized for the quiz on Friday, the math facts that we've gained automaticity for, but also our moral code, our intentions, our goals for later on this afternoon, and our goals for later on in life, our value system, our sense of right and wrong, our sense of what are the likely consequences of sort of behaving this way or behaving that way. All of the things that we know live in this know part of our brains and are contained there. And that's true sort of universally. The other part of the brain to consider is the go part of the brain. The go part of the brain doesn't do any thinking. It's just in charge of sort of making things happen or making things not happen, inhibiting. So if you think of the bus driver who's following directions on GPS just knows to turn, when to turn left, when to turn right, when to hit the gas, when to hit the brake. But other than that, GPS is actually doing the thinking for a bus driver, theoretically. For people without ADHD brains, the know and the go are very well connected. So when somebody reaches a fork, a metaphorical fork in the road, and is trying to decide whether to behave this way or that way, what happens is they pause for just a moment and they sift through everything they know that's relevant to the decision that they have before them. They think about anything that might impact sort of what's likely to happen if I take that fork and what's likely to happen if I take that fork, and which one is in my best interest and which one is in the best interest of the people that matter to me. Sift through what we know and we make a decision, come to a conclusion. We're going to take the right-handed fork. So we send that message to the go part of the brain. The go part of the brain says, okay, hits the brakes to the left, turns the steering wheel to the right, hits the gas to the right, and off we go. And when things work this way, when decision making works this way, what we end up is behavior that is driven by what we know, driven by our moral code, driven by our intentions, driven by our understanding of what's in our best interest, what best serves the people around us, what matters to us. And when the behavior is driven by what you know, what that means is that it reflects to the rest of the world all of those things, our value system, our moral code, our intentions. Because when you think about how we as humans judge each other and get to know one another and come to understand one another, none of us has our moral code stamped on our forehead, right? The only way that we understand sort of what kind of a person you are is by observing behavior. That's all we have as humans. People can tell us all day long that they're very kind and considerate and sensitive. But if we see them behave in ways that are unkind, insensitive, and disrespectful, we come to the conclusion that what's in the know part of their brain is actually not kind or sensitive or considerate. Okay. And so the fact that most of the time, most humans have this interconnected know and go with messaging in the brain going back and forth and connecting these two parts, this is what we end up with. And so we've learned to expect as humans that we can observe people's behavior and draw conclusions about who they are based on that behavior. Here's the rub. For those of us with ADHD, the know and the go are not necessarily connected in the same ways, particularly when people with ADHD are asked requested, told to engage in non-preferred activities. Non-preferred activities are basically anything that you don't feel like doing when you're told to do it, or how you're told to do it, or why you're told to do it. Um, Anything that comes sort of from the outside and is expected of us and is not something that is driven by our own just sort of individual drive is essentially a non-preferred activity. There are degrees of non-preference, but the brain, the ADHD brain, behaves differently when we are in a situation of trying to engage in non-preferred activities. And that is because the no and the go disconnect to a degree. If you think about the ADHD brain has the same knowledge bank, essentially, as anybody else, right? We've also memorized the spelling words. We've also considered and learned the rules for the classroom, the rules for home, the rules for the baseball field. We know the rules. We have a sense of consequences. We have a sense of shoulds and a moral code and a value system. All of this is intact in the ADHD brain. We also know that for those of us with ADHD, our go works perfectly well. The steering wheel turns left, the steering wheel turns right, the gas works, the brakes work. So the difference between the ADHD brain and the non-ADHD brain has to do with this connectivity and whether or not these two things are working in tandem. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples. I'm going to give you an example of somebody who maybe is in middle school, late elementary, maybe high school. Imagine a student coming home from school, the end of the day, and they come into the house and they put their bag down. A non-ADHD brain at that point might start thinking about how they want to spend the afternoon and the evening. And they might start sifting through what they know. They know that they have a spelling test to study for, or a paper to write, and a math assignment to complete. And they know that they're hungry and they're tired. And the thought of doing homework right now is not particularly appealing. So they sift through and they think, okay, let's boil it down for simplicity's sake we have two options here. One option is we take the momentum we have from the school day and we ride it. We go get that homework done sort of first thing and get it off our plates so that we can then have a real break. We can eat, we can relax, we can, spend the rest of the afternoon and evening just enjoying ourselves in whatever way we want. That's option one. Option two is, I think I'm going to be more effective if I eat something and if I take a little brain break and I have a minute to get myself together and then come back and do the homework later. That's option number two. Neither option is necessarily good or bad for any one individual. But let's say that this person without ADHD who just sifted through all of this information decided to do the homework right away. And so that's what they do. They do the homework right away. Maybe that works well for them. Maybe it doesn't. At the end of the process, they reflect back and they think, maybe they think, I was really inefficient doing my homework because I was just thinking about how hungry I was and I should have taken a break. Next time, tomorrow, when I get home from school, I'm going to do it differently. I'm going to take my break and then I'm going to do the homework. Maybe that's what they think. And they put a little pink sticky note in the no part of their brain that says, going straight to homework doesn't work so well for me. Tomorrow, I'm going to do it the other way. Or maybe they think, wow, that was awesome. I'm so excited. I got all my work done and now I'm ready and I can spend the whole rest of the afternoon doing whatever I want. Sticky note. Either way, they reflect, they learn something, and they put what they learned in that knowledge bank for later use. Okay. Tomorrow comes, they walk in the door, they sift through what they know. Oh, there's that pink sticky. Right. I know how I'm going to handle today based on what I learned yesterday. And they proceed. That's the non ADHD brain, because again, the no and the go were connected. Here's what happens to the ADHD kid in the same scenario. ADHD kid walks in the door, puts down the backpack, and hears one or maybe two messages screaming in their brains, starving and exhausted or spent. Done, 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 fully cooked and really hungry. And that's all they know. There's no sifting. There's no like, what's my plan? How should I tackle the rest of it? No, 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 no. Starving and need a break. To the kitchen. The bus goes. It just goes there. And it gets the family size bag of potato chips and it goes to the couch and maybe it opens up the iPad or the phone and you start eating and you start playing the game. And at some point, maybe close to dinner time, a parent walks into the room and sees an empty bag, family size bag of potato chips on the floor, crumbs everywhere, and the kid playing a game on their device. Parent might not be judged for asking, what you doing? What's happening here? Have you done your homework? No. Why did all of this happen? It's now dinner time and you haven't done your homework and you're full of potato chips. And now, like, don't you realize that you have that paper to write or that quiz to study for or that math assignment to do? I know. Well, then why? Why did you make the choice? Why did you make the decision to spend your afternoon this way? And if any of you have ADHD kids, probably you've heard an answer that looks something like this or sounds something like, oh, I don't know, sorry. Sometimes that answer can be a little annoying, I gotta say. And it feels like a non-answer. And so parents sometimes will push for like, no, 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 that's a cop out. Give me the real answer. Give me the real reason that you decided to spend your afternoon this way. The real answer is what they said the first time. I don't know. Sometimes they may come up with something else to sort of satisfy the question, but they were telling the truth the first time. They have no idea. There is this feeling of like, oh, right, here I am. Oh, yeah, now you pointed out, I see the empty bag and I see the crumbs, and oh, look at that. I played 247 rounds of this game. Yeah, this was not what I planned. What the parents and adults, teachers do, coaches do, what a lot of people do in a situation like this is assume that there must have been something missing in the no part of these kids' brains, right? There must be something that they didn't understand about why it's important to do their homework, why it's not a good idea to eat the family size bag of potato chips before dinner, why they should want good grades, why they should be hopefully trying to impress their teachers. Everybody still hear me okay? I just dropped an earbud there. Okay. And so we try to fill in whatever gap there must have been from the no part of the brain. And we tell them, It's really important for you to get good grades if you want to go to college, or it's really important that the teacher like you because blah, 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 blah. It's really important that this, don't you know that blah, 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 right? We all do this as parents and teachers and as just adults. We all make sure that the kid really understands and really knows why the behavior should be different tomorrow. And so if we've maybe been learning about behavior modification and we really think we've got this down, we might then have the kid tell us, okay, so tomorrow, what's your plan? What are you going to do? We make sure that they have the plan at the front of their brain. What's the plan for tomorrow? Tomorrow, I'm not going to get food before I study. I'm not going to sit on the couch. I'm not going to get on my phone. I'm going to go straight to my desk and I'm going to do my homework. And that's the way tomorrow is going to go. Okay, awesome. And you understand why that's the plan? Yes, got it. Perfect. Okay. Tomorrow comes. Kid walks in the door, puts down their backpack, and hears in their brain two things: starving and done. Need a break. Can't do any more right now. And goes to the kitchen, and there's an instant replay of yesterday. That sticky note about how they were planning to make today go is there. It's there. They understand why it's important that everything in this knowledge bank is there and it's intact. The problem is, as they walked in the door, the bus just went because it was acting on instinct and reflex and impulse. Okay. Repeat yesterday's scenario. The parent comes in, smoke is coming, steam's coming out of their ears, their face is turning purple. Like, did we not have this conversation 24 hours ago? What is wrong with you? I don't know. Right? Why did you choose again to behave in this way? I don't know. And the answer is they did not make that choice. Their behavior was no more planned and intentional and sort of mindful than a reflex, as if someone hit them in that special place in their knee that makes the leg kick, right? It's just like that. When they walked in the door, it's like someone hit them in just the right place and they drove to the kitchen. No more thought or consideration than that. And the problem is that when the no and the go are disassociated like this, the behavior does not reflect anything about what's in the knowledge bank. It makes it look like the kid doesn't understand how important it is to do homework or how much of a pain it is to then get caught up once you get behind and all of the things. Less impulse control is less self-control. Less self-control means less guiding of your own behavior so that it reflects who you are deep down inside. And I hope that that makes sense. And I want to again highlight that when we're talking about this, this is during non-preferred activities, okay? When kids with ADHD or individuals with ADHD get to do whatever they want, when they want, how they want, when they get to do their own thing, it's a very different story. Okay. But when they're asked to do non-preferred activities, such as homework, this is often the story. Okay. Let's talk about what happens then when the behavior that the outside world sees is actually not reflecting the core of the individual. Because the way that children develop their own sense of who they are, their own sense of identity, is by looking in the mirror that the world holds up to them. Okay? The rest of the world sees behavior and reflects back to the child their feelings about those behaviors. And that makes sense if you happen to be a child whose behavior reflects who you are. Then when people reflect back to you that this behavior or that behavior could be adjusted, or you might benefit from this or that, and people get redirected and people get educated, they can make adjustments so that they can become the humans that they want to become. Okay. But if you happen to be somebody who frequently misbehaves and is told by the rest of the world that you frequently misbehave and that you are less than, there are three problems that develop. The first is a sense that you cannot trust yourself to behave reliably and consistently in accordance with your own moral code. That's heartbreaking, right? If you don't have the self-control to even follow your own value system at times, that's a tough sort of baseline message to get about yourself as you're growing up and understanding who you are. The other thing another thing that happens is you get alienated from other people. The way we feel connected to the people around us is by feeling understood, right? Oh, they get me, right? And I get them. And so there's this like connectivity that we develop with other people when we're understood. The problem is, if your behavior is not reflecting who you are, how can anyone understand who you actually are? They can't. And so you don't develop that same sense of community and connection with the people around you. You end up feeling alienated and isolated because people aren't getting it. People aren't understanding the real you deep down inside, who never wanted to behave that way in the first place. And then this all comes around to develop a negative self-concept. The mirror that the world is holding up to this child is not only inaccurate and isolating, but it's actually ugly. It's ugly. And so then we come to think of ourselves as ugly, bad people, less than people. And then that cycles around, because when somebody holds up a really ugly mirror, we've already learned that we can't trust ourselves to question it. We can't trust our own judgment. And we don't have a whole community of people who totally get us, that we can go to and say, you know, so-and-so just showed me this really ugly mirror of myself, but I don't know. I mean, like, is that true? Is that really who I am? You get me. What do you think? They don't have that in the same way. So this thing can cycle and cycle and cycle. And that's where ADHD really becomes a life-altering sort of condition, and the trajectory is negative. Okay. It's not always going to be this way, and I'm going to talk about ways to undo this. But if you think about the sort of misbehavior and then the response that the world gives to the child who misbehaves, it's not going anywhere where we want it to go. And in fact, it can lead to significant anxiety. Okay. We can't trust ourselves. Nobody gets us. Everywhere we turn, people are holding up these ugly mirrors. How do we fix it? We try to fix it and we can't. We thought we understood what to do differently, but then we couldn't do it differently the next time. Very, very anxiety provoking. Here's something that I think it's really important for parents to understand. And bear with me while I try to work through this quickly. There's a thing called the Yerkes-Dodson law, which has to do with anxiety and performance and the connection between the two. So if you think about a very low stress level, you're going to end up with a very low performance. If you don't care and there's no reason to do something and it doesn't matter, you might not do it. And the whole thought of doing it is boring and not going to get you very far. As your stress increases a little bit here and there, the performance is likely to increase a little bit here and there. And then there's this sweet spot, which is like just the right amount of anxiety, just the right amount of stress to really keep you on your toes, right? At this point, there is optimal stress and optimal performance, and we are cooking with gas. Things are going really, really well. And I hope that everybody's had this experience where like all cylinders are just, everything is really working. Okay. Here's the thing: when anxiety or stress continues to increase beyond that sweet spot, the performance now starts to decline again. And if we sort of take this out to the nth degree, we end up at the place where the anxiety is so high that we're basically paralyzed again and not doing any performance at all. Okay. Here's the trick with this curve that I love. If you see a child who's performing at this C level, remember their peak is way up here, and they're performing at this like meh level. We don't know, based on their behavior and their performance, whether they are feeling not enough stress or too much stress. The behavior looks the same. And 99 times out of 100, the onlooker, right, from the outside, it often looks like the problem is not enough stress. They don't understand how important it is. And if only they understood how important it is and had a little extra fire under them, then we would see this improved behavior. So we emphasize how important it is, and we try to do everything we can do to scooch the other person's stress level here into this sweet spot, into this moderate zone, so that they can perform at their best. And that makes a lot of sense if we were correct in assuming that the performance was subpar because the stress level was too low. However, if the stress level is already too high, and that's the reason for the subpar performance, and we keep pushing it to the right, we're going to get worse and worse and worse performance. And this is something that I think is so important for parents and teachers and coaches to understand. You cannot assume, based on subpar performance, that the person doesn't care or doesn't understand or doesn't know how important it is. It could very well be that they're already so stressed out that they are unable to get themselves to perform in the optimal way. Okay. And so if we think about, again, this no-go situation, when we see behavior that is not what we want, we often assume that people don't know, that there's something lacking here, that they don't understand, they don't value whatever it is enough. And in fact, emphasizing that may not only not help for the reasons of the ADHD problem, but it may then actually increase the anxiety, which then makes it even less likely that we're going to get to optimal performance. Okay. I want to highlight that the ADHD brain is not always in this state of sort of disconnect between the no and the go. And I mentioned this briefly, but I do want to highlight this because this has to do with how we treat ADHD. What do you do with a kid who is in this state of disconnect? How can you possibly help them to the next day get their homework done? Well, it's important to understand that there are ways to get ADHD brains into this same sort of connected flow state that everybody else is in much more easily and naturally. The thing that does this is stimulation. When the brain is stimulated, the no and the go work together beautifully. What stimulates an ADHD brain? Well, it depends on the individual. But broadly speaking, we can say excitement, fascination, passion, relevance, urgency, novelty, sometimes fear, For some people, movement. For some people, it's competition. There are different things that motivate and turn on the brains of individuals with ADHD. Medication, I'll just say briefly, the reason that stimulant medications work is because they preferentially stimulate this connectivity between the no and the go. That's what the medication is all about. But from a non-pharmaceutical perspective, when we're trying to get things done, we have to leverage whatever works for the individual. And when we have this kind of stimulation happening and we get this connectivity, then we end up with behavior that does reflect who this person is deep down inside. We get that optimal performance, and we turn around the entire cycle of self-esteem development and self-identity development. And that is the most important thing, because when when a child grows up thinking of themselves as capable and competent and in control and being able to reliably guide their own behavior, then you have a kid who is not being criticized all the time and is open to developing better relationships with the people in their worlds. They feel understood, they feel connected, they feel less shame, they feel less isolated and alienated. And so now you've got a kid who, if they need some help at some point because they made a mistake or things aren't going well, they trust that they can go to the adult and talk about it. When the kid has grown up being constantly criticized and constantly being told that what the adult sees in the mirror is ugly and what the child should see in the mirror is ugly, how likely are they going to be to come and say, you know what, I made a mistake, can you help me? Not so much. Okay, we've got to foster the relationship. And the way to foster the relationship is to set these kids up for success so that they can develop positive self-esteem, learn to trust themselves, and learn to trust the adults in their world. And then they're in a position to learn and grow in a positive way. So the results of increased access to that no part of the brain, increased trust in oneself, increased connection to other people, and development of a positive self-concept. And now there is less stress in trying new things. Now there's less fear that we're going to mess it up again. There's less fear that we're going to get criticized again. There's less fear that we're going to forget something again or miss something again or make a silly mistake or whatever it is. And we are now able to proceed and try new things and learn with confidence, which is what we want for all of our kids, right? Take-home messages. This I have as a mantra in my head. Teach to the behavior that you want. So often, what we do with kids is say, no, don't do that. No, don't, you shouldn't do that. Don't, no. If we can help the kids understand that what we want from them instead is this, or this, that's a great place to start, because these kids grow up hearing a lot of no and not a lot of, well, what do you want from me? Okay. So once you've taught them what the behavior is that you want, the next step is to support them in behaving in that way. You want to help them be their best. Again, what adults do a lot, unfortunately, is we come down on these kids from above. No, you're not doing it right. You messed it up, right? Instead, we want to be like, here, you can do this and I can help you, okay? And the best way to do that is in a collaborative way. How can I help you so that the next time when you get home from school, you don't repeat the same pattern. Let's work on this together. Let's figure out a plan together so that I can help you be your best. Because I know that you want to get your homework done. I know that you want to do well in school. I know that you know all of the things, but operationalizing it is just really challenging. So let's figure out how to make that operationalization easier. And the result of that is then a preserved relationship. These kids will need you later. They will need you when they are older than they are now. Their challenges will only get more intense, and more, consequences are bigger. The stakes are higher. These kids need us as the adults in their lives. So we have to preserve the relationship. So these 4 take home messages are hopefully what you all can use to drive your own behavior the next time you see your kid with ADHD, or even your kid without ADHD, but your kid who's misbehaving, and not because they want to. And here's my contact information, and I'll leave this up for a minute, and I think hopefully we have some time for questions.
Yes. For those of you who have questions, please put them in the chat. I will say, Dr. Varblow, that was just extraordinary for me. I know that I have heard this before because you shared it,
Yeah.
not because it's not new and interesting. And I know that I've lived this, and I will tell you, as the questions may be coming in, and we do encourage you to ask them, that this has really been my own personal experience, and everything you've said is true. That, you know, preserving the relationship. It's like I want to text my son and say, I'm sorry for any time I've ever criticized you. But I think it is so true. And all of the things that you stated in terms of, them not really understanding the why, and them not really being able to change and modify their behavior, and the need to collaborate, and the need to water those seeds of what we want to see. There used to be a book, for many of you who might know, called No David, and it was the title of the childhood book, and my son's name is David, and we used to talk about that all the time, like No David.
Hmm.
Um, and um, and I know that he struggled with all of the things you talked about, because that's the mirror he saw, and it's taken him quite some time to finally feel understood. And the thing he would say to me more than anything was, um, you know, people don't get me. Nobody gets me.
It's heartbreaking, right?
And it is heartbreaking. And I like to believe that I was somewhat enlightened during all of this, even though it took some time, because I started really early. Um, and we do have a question here to move it off of me and my son, who I love to talk about so much. But first of all, Lisa said, this is absolutely amazing and eye-opening. Thank you so much, which I agree. And I think it's summarizing what I was saying. There was a question about what tactics can we use. I see it in my anxiety kid and my ADHD kid. They both have homework behaviors like you described. So starting with the idea of creating a collaborative solution, what would you say, Dr. Varblow?
So, there's this myth out there. It's like almost an urban legend, I think, that if people are going to be able to get their homework done, they need to be sort of in a white room with no distractions, and it needs to be silent, and there needs to be nothing but like the student and the material. And that's the way for kids to best get information into their heads. And what actually we'll find, if we scratch the surface of a lot of these kids with ADHD, is that those conditions do not sort of fit this. I'm trying to get back to the slide. Here we go. Do not provide the excitement, stimulation, any of the things that these kids need. So one of the things that I have found is that a lot of kids tell me if they have the opportunity to do their work at school, they're much more effective and productive than once they get home. Once they get home, sort of like all bets are off. Okay, so if you know that home is the place where it's just really hard to get motivated to get your work done, stay at school and go to the school library, go to the public library, go to Starbucks or another coffee shop. I swear the energy in coffee shops is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
There are people like coming in, they're getting their caffeine, they're getting out of there, they've got places to go. There are people typing and doing all of their work. The baristas are like getting those drinks out there, out there, out there. There's so much energy that can be infectious, and it can be a great place to get things done. Go to the study pro, same thing. If you need a body double, which a lot of us with ADHD don't do well by ourselves, we just need somebody sitting next to us, just that little bit of accountability. Lots of times I recommend that people get tutors and get executive function support, not because the kids need the content support or even need to be told what to do. They just need a body next to them.
And the
So
structure.
and the structure, right? Help get, getting started. Okay, well, let's just sort of take a minute together and figure out which thing do you feel like you want to do first. Talking it through. Every kid's going to be a little bit different, but asking your child to engage in that process of figuring it out with you rather than sort of dictating to them what the conditions need to be for them to be productive.
Yeah,
I've got
exactly.
kids who they need music in their ears.
Mm-hmm.
I've had some musician kids who needed music, but it made a difference whether the speakers were in front of them or behind them. Behind them was motivating, in front of them was not. Like, you never know what's gonna work for some kids. A great way to help figure it out is to go to the time when they were in flow. Think about the time that, things were really going badly or whatever it was, and something happened and like that switch got flipped and they went into super productivity mode. Okay, well, let's recreate that. What were the circumstances like? What was the lighting like? Were you by yourself or were you with other people? Were you, talking things out loud, or were you, what did it look like? And let's recreate that. Was there music?
Yeah.
Where were the speakers? All of that. And it's a process, and it won't always work. I mean, kids are moving targets because they're growing up as we're helping them. So what helps a kid in 4th grade may not at all work in 5th grade or 11th grade, but it's a continued dialogue to help them feel supported.
And I think what you said is extraordinarily accurate, of course, and that changing, as you're saying here in a different way, changing their emotional state by pairing something preferred, like their music or their space, um, with something non-preferred, and often giving them the structure. At times, people will call and ask for executive function coaching. But when I talk to them, I think, well, you know what they really may need is really our homework center, as you said, or things that are giving them just the structure and the space and the quote unquote effectiveness of a body double that allows them to reduce that emotional load that happens, that wall of awful, as Brendan Mahan says, between when they're thinking about starting and starting. And I think Teresa said that we might have just addressed her question about what if they can't articulate, how they can actually help them not to repeat the pattern. But I think that is the question often, just generally, as we have a few more minutes. When kids don't know how to articulate in a collaborative way, how can we help? What would you suggest?
It's tricky because when, my first instinct is, well, we want to give them options. But if you are already here, more options can be even more overwhelming and can push things further this way. So I would say the task number one is to calm the nervous system and get people's stress levels out of this sort of unhelpful zone. We want to work things back so that we can be calm and we can think and we can access all of our brain, and we can
Mhm.
be receptive to options and suggestions and help. Okay. Nobody is working at their best in any way when they are too stressed out. So if your only job is to help them figure out how to self-soothe and calm down so that they can think again, that can be one of the most important things that you can do. And again, it's going to look different for each individual. And then it's about just trying different things, right? Okay, I know it's overwhelming to think about, like, okay, we just know that this doesn't work. We don't know yet what will work, maybe. Maybe we haven't had
Mhm.
a lot of those experiences where it's sort of really come together. Okay, we're going to figure it out. We are going to figure it out. And it'll
Mhm.
take some time, and that's okay. We don't need to figure it out in the next
Mhm.
5 minutes, right?
Yeah, we don't
It's
have to
all
have all
okay.
the answers. We love to jump to solutions, I think, often as parents, but I love what you're saying that we don't always have to have all the answers. Just feeling that trust that we're really going to figure it out, I think makes.
Yeah. And we'll try different things, and some
Mhm.
will be helpful and some will not. And we'll learn from
Mhm.
that, and we'll
Mhm.
figure it out. And it's all going to be more knowledge in the knowledge bank that will
Mhm.
help us as we move forward.
Yeah.
But there's no ADHD brain is going to be connected as long as they're sort of this side of that anxiety chart. That's automatically going to block
Yeah.
that connectivity.
Which is another great reason to check our own emotions and think about our approach and take our own pause. Because if we push them into that space, then we're really just going to be spending a bunch of time pulling them back before anything
Exactly.
productive happens. We have to get out of our amygdala into prefrontal cortex, which is
Before we can
often,
help anybody else get there.
before
Yep.
we can help anybody else. And often when we're, kids they have test anxiety, we're asking them to turn their paper over and write the alphabet backwards or do something that's helping them use their prefrontal cortex. Um, well, I feel like this was extraordinary. I really love so much you said. I wrote pages and pages of notes, and I want to just leave everybody with one quote that you stated, Dr. Varblow, about the way that we feel connected to the people around us is by feeling understood. And I think that's so true. And I think it's a great way, sentiment to leave on and to thank you so much. I'll leave also with something Lisa shared, who's attending today. We find that something will seem to work once or twice, and then it stops working. As parents,
Mm.
we're constantly shifting, and it's so draining. Um, and I think that it's the case. And I want to put a shout out to all of you parents out there because it is not easy. It is not easy. And we are all, and there are no perfect or right answers, and we're never really doing it wrong. We're all just working together collectively to try to do the best that we can with the tools that we have at that time. And so, as I said, this will be recorded. It is being recorded, and we will go ahead and share all of that and send a copy of these. And an extraordinary thank you to you, Dr. Varblow. All the thanks are coming rolling in. We really appreciate it, and um, we can't wait to have you back. So, thank you again for all of the work that you do.
Thank you so much. It was my pleasure. Have a great
All
weekend,
right.
everybody.
Okay. Bye bye, you guys. Thanks so much. Stay warm.